So, for example, another way to do a guided contemplation in well, in a way that matters towards developing wisdom, at least, would be to ponder on various mental states that usually are something that people don't want to think about. So, something disagreeable. That's why the contemplation of death in the Buddhist practice is one of the quickest, the sharpest, obviously a bit risky ways of developing wisdom and experiencing dispassion towards existence. So, there are other ways as well that you could, other themes that you can dwell on that can help you develop the same dispassion. But it's not enough to think about it once or twice, just have a thought or something. I mean, on some occasions, I suppose, yeah. Like, if the conditions are right, so to speak, you're in the right frame of mind, one thought is enough to establish a theme that will have a deeper emotional significance on you. But that won't necessarily last. And if you're only establishing your practice of contemplation upon that feeling of quick inspiration, then you won't be really doing the work. So you want to be able to think and ponder on things, even if you don't necessarily feel like doing so. So in this particular instance, the theme you could be developing, for example, is the sense of safety. Like, just whatever situation you're living in, be it a monk, ordained person, or a lay person, or whatever. The sense of safety, which is obviously inseparable from your existential sense of self. So you want to, start looking into it to begin with. So ask yourself, safety, what does safety mean for me? Do I feel safe now? If the answer is yes, which probably most people would answer yes, then ask yourself a further question. Is that sense of safety something I can always have a say in? I can always be in charge of? Or is it sort of, my efforts can only approximate that result of safety, as in I'll hope for the best? So again, as I mentioned many times in other talks, you don't want to be like just asking question, providing answer. You want to ask the question upon safety in this case, that will then make you think about how you feel now. What does that safety mean for you? So what does the safety mean for you? You can let that question endure and think about it. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really just clarify what's already there. Sense of safety that you're talking about, but what does that mean? What constitutes safety in your experience? Is that absence of physical discomfort, of physical threat, absence of emotional discomfort? Both? And yeah, that's probably it. But then ask yourself, so what is then in common? What is a common thread through to physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, mental discomfort? What is absence of it means safety. So what is the common absence in these phenomena that determine your sense of current safety? So it's absence of unpleasant feeling on that fundamental existential level. Like, you can be experiencing some annoyance, but fundamentally that doesn't compromise your sense of safety. But now you want to be dwelling on the sense of safety. Why is it not compromised? Is it because you have a say in it? Why do you feel safe? I mean, your heart can stop next second, and that's it. Your safety is gone. So then your input in your own safety is very relative. But that's what an ignorant mind, the mind that's not devoted to training, that's what it forgets. Everybody knows that you are fundamentally not in control, but everybody chooses to not dwell on it because it's too unpleasant. It brings anxiety, dread, discomfort, all sorts of things. And that's the ignorance, that's avidya, choosing to not think about certain things that pertain to the nature of existence. So if you then start choosing against that grain of avoiding thinking about things that cause me anxiety, that's how you stop ignoring it. With the absence of ignorance, the attitude of ignorance, you will become more and more familiar with the nature of those phenomena, which means you will be less and less passionate about life as you know it. Because life as you know it depends upon ignorance of certain things. That's why the mind that's devoted to ignorance is the mind that finds joy in sensuality, that finds justification in anger, that finds peace in distraction. But if you uproot the ignorance, none of these three things can be manifested then, or can continue their uninterrupted manifestation in your life. Which means you'll still be alive, but now the life will have a different value for you. So sense of safety, again, it's something quite fundamental, very important to all of us, but something that pretty much everyone takes for granted until it's too late, usually. So you don't want to wait for that. You want to start questioning it and challenging it while you still can, while you still can make a choice about it. So sense of safety means absence of displeasure, threatening things that threaten my life, or the life I'm used to it. See, like for a person who is fully devoted and engaged in sensuality, not having access to sensual objects is already feels like a threat, existential threat. Somebody who is withdrawn from sensuality, doesn't devote his time just with sensual thoughts and actions, he won't feel threatened if he has no access to that which he is indifferent towards. But then he might feel threatened towards something that he does depend on. And it's like in the suttas, we discussed it before as well, when the monk dwells in the forest and he develops his mind upon the perceptions of the forest, then when he goes to the village, nothing in the village, nothing that he sees, smells, tastes, touches, in the village can disturb his mind, which is established upon the perceptions of the forest. But then the Buddha says, if something were to happen to that forest, his mind would be disturbed. So then he sees that, and then he goes a step higher. What is that forest then? What is higher in the forest? It's perception of earth, or you can even say perception of life, or perception of the living body, mindfulness of the body. You establish your mind upon that, then doesn't matter the circumstance, doesn't matter the change of the circumstances, whether it's adverse or positive or whatever, you would remain unaffected, because your mind has not been cultivating dependence upon those things. So that's why you want to start questioning the sense of safety, because for most people, the starting point is that sense of safety is proliferated too far out, as in, it's not just your health and your life that you depend on. It's your health, your life, your work, your family, your friends, people you want to do what you tell them to do, access to food, access to distraction, access to sensual objects. That's where people's minds are, that how far out. So any of those things, anything less than those things, they would be experiencing a degree of threat. Like threat to the lifestyle that I know. Or, which is more correctly to say, threat to the lifestyle that I take for granted and assume. But you want to reflect that those things will inevitably, they have to be taken away from you. So you better start dwelling on that before it's too late, rather than waiting for them to be taken away from you and then you think somehow. Because if you haven't been dealing with those things while they were in front of you, what makes you think you'll be able to deal with them when they're removed against your will? It's too late. It's like being able to withhold, 300 kilos on your back suddenly. Never ever made the effort to put weight on your back and endure it. Just hope that when it comes, you'll be able to hold it. Well, that's quite a foolish attitude. So, your meditation, your contemplation can be reflecting upon how far is your sense of safety proliferated. How much did you take for granted, basically, of your life, of your sense experience, of people around you? Hey, quiet. And then start reining it in, bringing your mind back to things that are not so much out of your control. So you can ask, where is my sense of safety? What makes me feel safe right here, right now? If I were to get sick, will I experience anxiety? Yes. That means then that there is a degree of threat in sickness, which means my safety is overreaching, my sense of safety. Because you can only do so much to control, to have input in your health, but fundamentally it's not on you. Yeah, it doesn't mean you neglect your health, but don't use the amount of input you have in your health, don't use that to develop a notion that you are in charge of your health. So don't ignore the fact that you can never, ever step outside of it and become the full, complete master. And if you have any doubt about that, just imagine getting sick. Would you be affected? And if the answer is yes, emotionally, mentally, I would be affected. I would, be afraid or whatever, depending on what sickness it is, means I am threatened by it. And if there is an experience of threat, can only affect you because your assumption is taking up things that are not in your control. That's it. So if you stop taking things that don't belong to you, including your own health, your own body, your own life, and everything else that comes out of it, nothing can threaten you. There is no basis for that threat to land. So you could see, nothing has changed in things. You still have your life, you're still alive, Arahant is still alive. So nothing has changed, yet everything has changed because your attitude has changed. So you don't need to rewrite the significance of things. Like liability to illness stays for Putujana and for an Arahant. It's just because Putujana is taking his life for granted, his senses, his functioning senses as fully mine, then he will be affected when illness comes. But Arahant has removed his attitude, not the senses or their liability and everything else. He has just removed his assumption of ownership. And that's why he has no fear. He cannot be threatened by anything. And also on a practical level, you can, if you dwell, for example, on the nature of your body, nature of your life, mindfulness of death, means you are then establishing your mind upon something that's better than depending or trying to control the circumstances. For example, okay, I don't care what happens over there, but I care what happens in my house. I care what happens to my house. I care to who moves and becomes my neighbor, or all these things. But if all you care, even when you're in your house, is about mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of liability to death or sickness and so on, even if things happen to your house, to your own bedroom, to your own environment, the closest environment, you won't be affected by it. And then you won't be affected even if your body starts to break apart while you're still alive. Because your mind has already withdrawn from dependence on the senses that were secondary to the body. And that's something, again, it's not something you would get instantaneously, like one thought and that's it, everything is clear. It basically is something you have to keep doing, because it's not about, again, all these truths are in a way obvious. And that's not the problem. The problem is that your actions, your choices, your intentions are choosing to ignore them. That's it. That's why I keep repeating, avijja, it's not a metaphysical ignorance or a mystery or a secret behind the veil of Maya or something that you need to discern. No, it's your everyday attitude in regard to your everyday experience. When you choose to ignore things that undermine your gratuitous desire, your gratuitous ill will, or your gratuitous need for distraction. That's it. You stop ignoring these things, you will automatically then be removing layers and layers and layers of your lust, aversion and delusion. That's it. And you could see ignoring it's not on the level of just being mindful every second of your life. No, it's on the level of your intentions. Your intentions determine whether there is lust, whether you're acting out of lust or out of non-lust, absence of lust. So when I say you practice mindfulness of these things, I don't mean you keep repeating to yourself, I'm present, I'm sitting, I'm talking, I'm walking. No. You maintain the knowledge of an enduring state of mind that determines your intention. That's how you don't ignore. You don't ignore where your intentions are rooted. Because by not ignoring where your intentions are rooted, you won't be able to act carelessly out of them, because action is a result of your intention. So if you're mindful of where your intention is rooted, you're by default mindful where your action would be rooted if you were to perform it. So then you abstain from it if it's unwholesome. And that's it. You stick to that fundamental principle, and you would prevent your mind from a gratuitous maintenance of lust, aversion, and distraction. That's it. So that's why that avijja is something you do, not something you don't know. You need to figure out. It's well, okay, you can not know what you're supposed to do. Sure, that also comes under avijja, but it's really more of an attitude. You maintain your avijja through the attitude of ignoring the nature of things. Like through acting out of sense of self, for example, you maintain the ignorance that your experience cannot belong to you. You maintain the ignorance of anatta. And you can see it's mutually exclusive. By not acting out of sense of self, well, you're closer to understanding the nature of anatta. So you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, oh, I am not acting out of sense of self, but I still have a sense of self. That is mine, that belongs to me. So it's either or. You're either with the grain of ignorance or against the grain of ignorance if you stop ignoring it. And so it's not incidental that certainly in the beginning, all the attitudes that go against the ignorance are pretty much the attitudes that will cause you lots of anxiety, lots of dread, lots of fear, lots of doubt, hindrances. Because that is the Mara's defense. He doesn't want you to stop ignoring. That's how he keeps you bound to the experience that you don't really own. And that's why for most people the spiritual practice just becomes the extension of their sensuality. You know, if your spiritual practice is not undoing your doubt, your anxiety, not through avoiding, but through being unaffected by it. So in the face of anxiety, you're not afraid. That's how you know, oh, okay, well, this is certainly closer to the truth than if I refuse to admit that I'm still liable to anxiety, for example. And then my practice is just finding sort of colorful distractions in the spiritual nature, disguised as spiritual things. Meditation experiences, devotional, whatever else practices, quite often are fully rooted in just having something more meaningful to do, but you're equally depending on having something to do, which is what keeps you floating in that attitude of ignoring that prevents you from facing the truth of anxiety. So by undoing, so that's what I mean. So by undoing your, by not maintaining your attitude of ignoring, you will be certainly initially experiencing more anxiety, less confidence, more doubt, because you're undoing non-doubt, confidence, absence of anxiety that was based upon ignoring. And that initial undoing will be unpleasant. But then once you go through with it, and you would go through with it if your behavior has been developed, as in if you were virtuous, not giving in to the gross acts of lust, aversion, or distraction, that's already a form of strength, a form of container that can then enable you to contain the very anxiety or dread or doubt or whatever hindrance has been sort of stirred up on account of you facing the reality of things. And when I say reality, I mean the nature of them. So in a way, you want to start undermining, testing your sense of safety that you have now. Because if it were truly true safety of being unable to suffer on account of anxiety, suffer on account of doubt, or suffer on account of hindrances, then it will stand the test. But if it's not that kind of safety, like safety of wisdom, safety of liberation, you will be experiencing a degree of anxiety or fear, and that's the practice then. It outlines the work for you perfectly. So say, like practically now, say you start questioning your sense of safety, and yeah, there's a bit of anxiety. You realize, yeah, you can get sick. Somebody could come, burn your house, take you away, kill you, whatever. Those are possibilities, and you choose to dwell on them not because of some sort of morbid fascination. You choose to dwell on them because they counter your indolence and your complacency. That is the automatic response if you don't question those things, if you don't think about those things. So you only do it for the practical purpose of dispassion, Because you can't be emotionally invested in something that's, 50-50. It might be taken away. Okay, well, I better be careful how much I commit to it, because it might disappear the next moment. But if you just ignore that fact, you start to assume, no, it's going to be here tomorrow. Of course, just think positive. Just think that it's going to be there forever, for as long as I need it. Then yeah, of course, that's the attitude you're going to develop. And then you'll be acting accordingly. As if, yeah, you are your own master, you're going to live forever, last forever, things will stay forever as long as you want them. And even people say, no, of course, we all know we're going to die. No, they still assume their sense of self will live forever. That's very often the case. So you want to be reflecting on these opposing themes just to question that sense of gratuitous safety that was based entirely on ignoring the possibility of these things, because yeah, it's 50-50 with everything. Whether you're going to be alive or not tomorrow, it's 50-50. But you choose, no, I'll probably be alive. Why did you choose that thought? Because you might not be alive. Death might be hanging over you. Well, it is actually hanging over all of us. So it's certain, you just don't know exactly when. So why do you then keep investing your attention and choosing based upon as if you will see the old age? Why is that? There's absolutely no justification for that. So then you want to just practice mindfulness of that, not to the point of, oh, I want to die, but to the point of, okay, I'll practice enough so I just stop gratuitously assuming that I will live for 50 years. Because it's 50-50. That's it. You don't need to push it further. You don't need to prove yourself that you will die either. You just need to stay with that very unpleasant and kind of ambiguous 50-50. That's it. Because if you stay with it, that will become your theme, which means you won't be able to act as if you're going to live forever. Which means already a great deal of passion, anger, irritation, righteous indignation, need for distraction, it will be uprooted because you remove the basis for its growth. So that's how these contemplations are done rightly. Not like develop like a full-on mental obsession of like I'll die. No, that becoming equally mechanical, equally ignorant. You're just trying to replace one thing with the other. No, you practice it only to the extent of putting in question what you've been taking for granted, not overdoing it. And that's why it's the middle way. You need to discern that initially ambiguous ground of it might be, it might not be, either way it won't be for me, as some of the suttas say. But not like it will not be for me, I guarantee. No, it might not. Either way, it's not for me. As in, I cannot own it. So I might live tomorrow, I might not live tomorrow. Either way, it's not mine. Because if it were mine, I will know for sure that I will live tomorrow. But you don't. So that whole practice of like questioning the certainty of things is only so you remove the basis for acting out of passion towards the things. And that basis is you must take it for granted that it is yours, that you are in its control, and it's going to be there for as long as you want it to be. And again, if you have trouble grasping this theme, take something simpler. Like say there is like a certain, I don't know, say undertaking. Like imagine somebody comes to you and asks you for to invest a great amount of work or finances or whatever into something. They won't reward you in a great sense. So it's not like a gamble, taking on risk to get more. It's more like, are you going to build this house? Are you going to spend lots of time building, whereby you agree that at any point of your work investment, it will be torn down by somebody? So you would consider, well, if you have no choice, like you say you can't say no to it, you must do it. How would you be doing it? How would you be going about that undertaking if fundamental sort of state of it, it's not up to you? If somebody can, in the middle of your work, in the middle of your commitment, in the middle of your investment, can just wipe it away. But you have no choice, but you have to do it. You can't say, okay, I'm not going to even start then. No, you have to start. So you realize you have no choice about doing things, but you certainly have a choice about how much you get invested in your doing. how much passion you allowed, how far you allowed for passion to take you out there in your project, in your fantasy of, I can't wait for this finished product. And actually, anything falls into this example I'm giving. Starting a family, maintaining a family, ambition, work, study, even being a monk. Like for many people would become like, oh, I'm going to develop this, practice in great monastery and disciples. Like not necessarily crudely, but kind of implicitly, the monk's life takes you in this great, whatever, ambitious undertaking of spreading Dhamma. Now, if you keep yourself in check, in a sense that you realize that doesn't matter how much you invest, it doesn't matter how much you value it, if it's taken away, you won't be able to prevent it. That will automatically it will sort of dampen the amount of passion you can invest in it. It will prevent you from sort of losing perspective on it. And you can maintain that attitude in regard to everything, whatever you're about to do. Even if it's a small thing, not a massive undertaking that takes years or something like that. Just a smaller day-to-day tasks. If you don't forget that your life can be taken away at any point of that invested effort in a certain task, means there won't be any passion to follow your effort of performing the task, which means you're already practicing a form of equanimity and indifference towards the task, because you don't lose the perspective of fundamental impermanence of it. That's it. You don't have to keep saying to yourself, oh, it's going to be taken away, it's going to be taken away. All you need to do is don't forget that it could be taken away. That's it. That's more than enough. And you clarify that theme, you fortify the basis for non-passion, non-aversion, and non-distraction. So that comes back to that sense of safety. You feel safety when you ignore the risks of your undertaking. That's what your safety is based upon. Well, most people's safety is based upon. Ignorance of the possibility of being it otherwise, which is too unpleasant to dwell on. So that's why getting wisdom and developing mental strength goes hand in hand. Mental strength as in samadhi, being able to maintain the composure, goes hand in hand. Because if you're not able to maintain the composure of a certain theme, the slightest sight of a theme that might cause anxiety, you'll be looking away. And that's a problem. So that's why you start practicing sense restraint, verbal restraint, so that then you can actually have a mental restraint of running away. Like as the Buddha said, like the weak horse or the elephant that gets scared even just by the sound of the battle. He doesn't even see it, let alone gets into the fight. He's already running away, legging it, just at the sound of the enemy's drums. But that's not a given. You are responsible for choosing to run away. So if you run away at the sound of the enemy's drums, okay, start exposing yourself to the sound of enemy drums and withhold the tendency to run away. Take it on a bit by bit. Then you might be able to take that on. Then you run away at the sight of the drums, at the sight of the enemy. Then you work with that. And then in the end, you'll be in the battle and you won't be running away. And it's not always a battle. But when it does come, you don't run away. That's the point. And you won't run away if your behavior is based on sila and virtue. If you're developing it rightly, if you're practicing sense restraint. You won't be leaking that container that I mentioned earlier. And that's how your sense of safety will then not depend on presence or absence of enemy, presence or absence of threat. No, it will basically depend on your understanding of nature of things. Oh, this is not mine, so why would I need to be all anxious about protecting it? And everything, your senses are not yours. But again, you can say our senses are not mine, but I keep acting out of the sense of self, sense of ownership of the senses. So you can say all you want, oh yes, everything is impermanent, modern science has proven the impermanence, we all understand impermanence, the Buddha was right. You still act out of your sense of appropriation, which means what you're saying are just empty, hollow phrases. If you truly understand impermanence, you're impenetrable to fear and anxiety. Because things that are liable to be destroyed are not your concern. And that's like that, I can't remember the sutta off the top of my... Well, I remember the sutta, I don't know which one it was. It was the that monk who was going around the forest saying, "What a joy, what a delight," and people heard him, other monks heard him, and they thought, "Oh, he must be thinking about his lay life." And he's saying what a joy and delight there was. He's not happy being a monk. So they went and told the Buddha called him and said, "Is it true that you're saying this?" He says, "Yes, it's true." Like, why is that? It's because you think about lay life. So no, quite the opposite. He said, "When I used to be a layman, I was a prince or whatever in line to a throne, and I didn't have a moment of peace because I was always fearing for my life. So I had guards guarding my palaces, guarding my doors, guarding me at day, guarding me at night, because it was a good likelihood somebody is going to make an attempt in my life to take my place in line for the throne. So I was living in constant fear, constant anxiety, constant defense of things that I deemed mine and things that I deemed I'm entitled to, the throne and all the value and stuff that comes with it." But then he gave it all up, became a monk, became an arahant, and he said that now I'm living in this completely wild forest with wild animals, tigers and elephants and snakes. It's a good likelihood I might lose my life quickly, yet I have zero fear because I understood the Dhamma. As in, he stopped protecting things that are unprotectable. Your life, your senses, your existence. He gave it up. And he said it's a tremendous joy. And that's why he goes around the forest saying, "What a joy, what a joy. How much I used to invest in self-defense through all sorts of guards and everything else, and I was so unhappy. And now I'm liable to die next moment and I experience complete happiness because there's nothing for me to defend. Never was." And that's pretty much all to it.